Hello and welcome to Geek Boulevard. Steve here to give you my movie review of the week. I have seen A24's latest film, Heretic, and I'm here to give you my thoughts on the movie. Keep in mind that there will be spoilers in this review later in the video like usual, so if you want to go into the film without any more knowledge about the plot, I suggest that you skip to the final score portion of this review once I get to that point. Heretic is directed by Scott Beck and Brian Woods. It is rated R with a runtime of 1 hour and 50 minutes. Two young missionaries become ensnared in a deadly game of cat and mouse when they knock on the door of the diabolical Mr. Reed. Trapped in his home, they must turn to their faith if they want to make it out alive. Let's start with my positives. I think main stars Sophie Thatcher and Chloe East, who are great as sisters Barnes and Paxton respectively. They are sister missionaries who serve the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and both characters seem to present some different personality traits, and I think those personalities, despite their differences, bounce off of each other pretty well, I feel. Sister Paxton is very happy-go-lucky and kind-spirited. She's a little bit naive, whereas Sister Barnes is a bit more timid and clearly is hiding a bit of a past that we don't know about until later in the film. I thought their performances were great overall, and I also think they bounce off of Hugh Grant well, who plays the antagonist Mr. Reed. Hugh Grant as a villain in a horror film is something I didn't really know I needed, but I'm glad I got it. The same Hugh Grant, mind you, that starred in such films as 9 Months and the Bridget Jones films, takes on a horror film as the antagonist. It kind of blows my mind. He absolutely crushed this performance. When the sisters meet him, he's quite charming at first, but comes off a little awkward, and as they're sitting in his living room, he starts to become even more off and asking very inappropriate questions about their faith that these two are clearly not comfortable answering. He has been doing so much research on every religion he could find and was kind of struggling to find his place, to find the one religion that worked best for him. And turns out he did discover it. He calls it the one true religion, and he wants to show the sisters what that is. When the two figure out that this is not going to end well for them, they decide it's probably best to leave, and they try to go out through the front door, but you know, horror films, you can't just go out through the front door. There's always something either locking it or blocking it or whatever, and the door is locked, so they're forced to enter through one of two doors through the back, and Mr. Reed labels each door belief and disbelief, and he wants them to pick a door that falls more in line with their beliefs. And that's where I want to talk about the film's thought-provoking dialogue, as I feel it's very smartly written. Mr. Reed asks these very philosophical questions about religion, a debate, if you will, that does put some interesting thoughts in your mind. Now, the film is by no means trying to make anyone question their faith or their religion, but it does provide some interesting dialogue and insight that the audience can sit with and kind of stew over and think really in depth about. It had me really engaged in those scenes, and I think the best one of those scenes involves the game of Monopoly. I'll just leave that there. Once you see it in the film, given the proper context, you'll see what I mean. Hugh Grant did such a fantastic job as this disillusioned man just struggling to find his right path, and in his sick, twisted mind, appears to have found it. Now I'm going to go into my negatives, or rather just one negative, and that is that the film really isn't that scary. There's maybe like 2 jump scares, and I thought that they were rather weak. And I think this film is more along the lines of what a thriller movie would be instead of like an outright horror movie in the general sense. There's definitely a lot of unsettling moments in this movie for sure. It was enough to keep me engaged, but don't go in expecting an outright horror film in that, you know, very traditional sense. I want to talk about the ending of the film and what the reveal of the one true religion is. So that is going to be your spoiler warning. Again, if you want to skip this portion of the video, please do so, as I think you will benefit from knowing as little as possible going into this movie, and you can go to my final score instead. Okay, so Mr. Reed mentions a few times in the film that he has discovered what he believes to be the one true religion. After all of the research that he's done and all of the tests, it turns out that each religion boils down to one common thing, and that is control. Control through religion is how, according to the film and according to Mr. Reed, you can keep people in line, keep them in check. And the questions raised by that notion are quite interesting. Why do we believe in the things that we do? Is it because we were raised to believe it? You know, if you do good things, you go to the good place. If you lead a bad and selfish life, you go down to the bad place. This whole film is his sort of twisted experiment to show these sisters that control is the one true religion in the world. And no one seems to see that but himself. He puts on this grand show that the sisters at first believe is real, as this elderly woman who apparently has been held captive in his home down in this like dark cellar, this dark area, this basement, and she is fed this poisoned blueberry pie and apparently dies. And he tries to show them that she will be resurrected and they're going to witness a miracle. And he tries to make them believe that that is so, but it turns out when they take their eyes off of her and then they come back to her, her head is in a different position, and it turns out that she is just one of many elderly religious women that are being held captive there, and they just switched out the body of her with another one that looks identical to her to make them think that, oh, she's resurrected, she's alive now. She starts to mumble a lot of different words that don't quite make sense, but then Sister Paxton hears her specifically say, it's not real. And she kind of puts two and two together and figures out that this whole show is just that. It's not real. It's all a show. It's all an experiment to control them and study how it's so easy to control someone through their faith. Sister Paxton, by the film's end, asks him, why are you doing this? And he simply says, because you allowed me to do so, or something to that effect. There is some death in the film as well. Sister Barnes does get stabbed and supposedly dies, only for her to have some strength left in her after all, and kills Mr. Reed before he eventually tries to kill Sister Paxton. And she succumbs to her injuries finally, Mr. Reed is killed, and Sister Paxton is the only survivor of this horrific ordeal. When she escapes, she sees that a butterfly lands on her fingertip, and it harkens back to a scene earlier in the film where she mentions that when she comes back into the world after she passes away, she wants to be reincarnated as a butterfly and she can land on the fingertips of her loved ones to kind of show that she's there. And the thing that's odd about this final scene is that the butterfly is just not there anymore. It's completely gone. It's almost as if it was never even there in the first place. So it kind of allows the audience to kind of interpret how they see the ending. So I liked that they did that. In conclusion, I'm giving Heretic a score of 4 out of 5. The performances from Sophie Thatcher and Chloe East are great, and their exchanges with an outstanding Hugh Grant as the villainous Mr. Reed was a real treat to watch. The film is smartly written with dialogue that debates and provokes in-depth thinking about the nature of religion and belief. The only downside is that the film is very lacking on scares and comes across as more of a thriller than an outright horror film. But those are my thoughts. I want to know what you guys thought of Heretic. Did you see the film? Did you enjoy it? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And don't forget, if you liked the video, make sure you hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to Geek Boulevard, and tick that notification bell so you can always be up to date when my next film review or trailer reaction drops on the channel. Thank you for watching, guys, and until next time, keep it classy and keep it geeky.
You figured it out yet?